welcome to the Big Pallet Debate here in our Swisslog Intralogistics Lounge. In this interview, we're going to talk about the future of pallet automation. What is changing, what still works, and where the real opportunities lie. My name is Franziska Zimmermann, and I'll be hosting our Intralogistics Lounge, and I have a true expert with me right now, James Sharples, Head of Global Commercial Strategy at Swisslog. Welcome, James.
Yeah, hi. Good morning.
Great to have you here. James, you've been with Swisslog for more than 27 years now, but before that, you worked in soft drinks distribution and were involved also in building a pallet warehouse from the customer side.
Yes.
So you really know what matters in practice, right?
Yeah, that was my real introduction to materials handling.
Okay.
I came from a kind of packaging background, but my first pallet warehouse that I built was actually as a customer, so understanding it from the customer side.
Yeah.
And really, in those days, it was a long time ago, it was also a new technology, the first double deep warehouse in the UK at the time. So it really was an interesting project, and that's actually what led me into coming to Swisslog after a number of years.
Great. And what I'm actually curious about is, back then, were robots already being used to move pallets?
We still had technology to move pallets, not necessarily robots.
Okay.
A lot of the systems then, Swisslog started making their stacker cranes more than 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So that technology, being able to store pallets and use the vertical height in the warehouse, has been around for a long time. A lot of that technology actually started coming from the forklift truck industry, and they're moving into more fixed stacker crane in an aisle. But now we see an explosion of new technologies, more capability, mobile robotics technology, which is really enhancing the portfolio for Swisslog, addressing the customer needs in different ways.
Yeah.
And now we have this broad portfolio, which allows us to really focus and deliver really good solutions for customers, because their needs are different, depending on the industry, depending on the requirements. Then we have the right technologies to fit their needs.
Yeah. So, and if we are talking about today and about traditional automation versus new, from your perspective, what fits where and why?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we get it a lot from customers as well now, because we're starting to move away from the traditional stacker crane, the fixed aisle, fixed crane solution, into this world of more flexibility, a more modular system using roaming pallet shuttle or mother and child type pallet shuttles like our pallet power store technology, and really trying to address the customer needs in different ways.
Yeah.
There are customers with needing pallet storage at the end of a production line that's very fixed. You know, they're producing 24/7. They're creating a big volume of finished goods pallets. They need to store those, be able to ship them very quickly. You see other applications in a retail warehouse or as a dispatch buffer, where different technologies then become more important and more flexible to meet the customer requirements. So that new technology, now we have this broad portfolio from our Vectura crane to our power store, kind of fixed aisle shuttle. And now we have our new Agile store, which is in partnership with Eurofork, which gives us a real pallet roaming technology, a four-way kind of roaming pallet shuttle, which adds a lot of flexibility, and customers are looking for that. But there's still a use case for each of those technologies. There's still a benefit of stacker cranes in some applications or roaming technology in other applications. And what we try and do at Swisslog is really try and match the right technology for the right customer. This is important.
Yeah. And is there still space for double deep storage in this modern world of pallets?
Yeah, I think double deep is very strong in the industry still. It's still ultimately the most flexible way to balance storage requirements and throughput requirements.
Yeah.
Every pallet store really has this balance between how many pallets you want to store, what the throughput is, and then also based on the SKU range of the customer, what's the right way to store those pallets. We range from single deep to double deep to multi-deep, and some of those technologies are really focused on multi-deep solutions.
Yeah.
But double deep still has a very strong place. It's the best balance between storage requirements and throughput requirements. But every case we have to look at the merits. If I'm a food and drink manufacturer, I'm linked to production, I'm making big batches of the same product, then a multi-deep application is very applicable. And if I'm a food and bev kind of manufacturer like that, maybe I have 500-600 SKUs up to 1,000 SKUs, then that multi-deep kind of technology really suits my profile. And it's more about pallet density and throughput. But then if I go to a retail environment or other industries, spare parts, for example, where I have many tens of thousands of SKUs, then that's where double deep becomes a more flexible storage. It works better, you get a high utilization within the store where you have this large SKU range. So it's always a matter of finding the right balance for the customer.
I understand. And would you say that warehouses today are becoming more compact or just more efficient in how the space is actually used in the warehouse?
I think everybody is looking to make the absolutely best use of the space they have. Typically, customers have limited footprint, particularly in food and bev, where they might be linked to production. That space on site is valuable for their production requirements. So any warehousing is normally trying to work with a limited footprint, and that's where they can use the heights. So that's where something like our Vectura crane becomes really useful. Up to 40, even 50 meters high, you can really maximize the storage within a fixed footprint by going as tall as possible. And then you have other applications, brownfield applications, lower building heights, even more geographically focused. In the US, for example, more low buildings, not so high.
And why is that?
It's just because land is not as expensive, so it's easier. They can go wider rather than taller. So depending on the country, you're more focused into a small footprint, or the footprint becomes less important. Then you can optimize based on having the right balance again between the technology for a given height, and that's where maybe the shuttle-based systems become even more flexible.
And do you actually see AMRs replacing conveyors?
Yeah, I think as we see that move from fixed aisle cranes like Vectura to more mobile technology like the roaming shuttle, we see the same at the front end of the system. So every pallet storage system needs a front end to manage the transport of pallets in and out of the storage. And that's traditionally been with conveyor, fixed conveyor, maybe with monorail systems where we get higher throughputs. But what we see now is also we can solve that problem with AMR, and that gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we manage the customer flow. Generally, they're seen as higher availability systems because I have many vehicles. I don't have any single points of failure in the system. But again, we have to look at it and find the right balance. We offer the full range of solutions from fixed conveyor to monorail to AMR. Our Intramove AMR can manage that pallet transports. And we see kind of customer needs more for that flexibility, having a clean floor, very important in food and bev that they can get in and clean the floors as well. And AMR gives them much more flexibility. We don't restrict access for maintenance or for pedestrian access by having fixed conveyors or fixed monorail in front of the ASRS. So we see more and more this requirement for as much modularity and flexibility within our systems, and this drives us towards offering our AMR technology to solve those needs.
And do you actually see like certain use cases or industries where AMR is making the biggest impact today, or is it just AMRs everywhere? Or
I think they can be used in many applications. What we do see, particularly in food and bev, again, where we can connect to production lines. So actually being able to collect a finished pallet from the end of the production line using the AMR and immediately route it into the correct storage aisle. Rather than having, this is always an issue because particularly when we're linked direct to production, space, access to bring packaging materials in, to bring people in, is always very constrained. It's normally very tight in terms of the space available, and having fixed conveyors really gets in the way. So going to AMR solution where we don't have fixed technology, it's flexible, it can also adapt in terms of the routing to take account of ongoing kind of operational demands. This is much more flexible. It's much more suited to what the production facilities need in terms of access, and then it can connect directly to the storage technology as well. So it gives a lot of flexibility. There is still applications where it makes a lot of sense to have a conveyor system.
And where?
Typically where we have more fixed systems. So each technology is good for certain throughputs.
Yeah.
So once AMR really is scalable, you can add more vehicles to actually cope with higher throughputs. But if you have a system which is really designed for a long life, where the requirements are known, typically when we link to production, so we can have AMRs to connect to the production lines to collect the finished goods pallets, but then in front of the ASRS, then we can have conveyor because it's fixed. We know that's going to be the life of that system for many years because it's tied to a production site that will be there for a long time. What we see is where we have changing requirements, and a lot of the industry, the industry changes very fast. When we're in retail, in e-commerce, the demands change, year by year. And they need to adapt, whether it's how they receive product or order profiles. They're constantly changing. So having a technology which can adapt, they can change the routing, they can route to other parts of the system. So AMR technology gives a lot more flexibility in terms of how we can expand and extend the system. It's very easy to add vehicles, whereas if I have a fixed conveyor, one, it's fixed, it's blocked, it's restrictive. It's also then a much more impact to actually extend the system in the future, and more costly. So AMRs bring a lot of flexibility to the customer to be able to say, right, I can start small, I can start with a small fleet of vehicles, and as my volumes grow, as my business grows, I can add more vehicles. If I have to add new destinations, new infeeds, new outfeeds, it's very easy to reroute, to map those onto the fleet management system, and gives me ultimate flexibility. They don't have to think about fixing conveyor that takes a long time to install, creates a lot of downtime. That's where the advantages of AMR technology really come into the front for the customer, because it gives so much flexibility, particularly in an operational environment.
Yeah, so I can tell you're a big fan of AMRs, that's for sure. And one last question, James. Staying with the Big Pallet Debate, is there anything you believe about pallet automation that the industry might not want to hear?
I think the big challenge now is I think there's always a view of kind of what's new is interesting, always exciting to have the latest new technology. Sure. And the market is moving towards, there's definitely we see it, talking to customers, I see it, a big interest in this roaming pallet shuttle technology. Yeah. And there is definitely a use case for this. But there's also use cases and customer needs which really still work best with the more traditional technology, where it still makes sense to have a stacker crane, and it can be very cost effective to have that. Not always the newest. It's not always the newest, kind of shiniest new technology. Yeah. They're very good and they have their use cases, and there's in those applications there's a lot of advantages, but in some use cases it's still adequate, it's still good to have stacker cranes, to have fixed conveyor, and that meets the needs of those customers, probably a more affordable, a more economic solution. And this balance between space, cost, throughput, how much inventory the customer wants to store, there is a sweet spot for each one of those technologies, and whether it's Vectura, whether it's Power Store, whether it's Agile Store, I think that's the message I think to give to customers is don't assume that it's one or the other. We have the ability to actually look at each technology, look at the customer needs, really find the best fit from a flexibility point of view, from a cost point of view. And sometimes the traditional is still good, still the best for a specific customer. And I think that's the thing that obviously everyone is excited by the new technology, but we have Our stacker crane is one of the best on the market. It's very mature. We've been making it for 50 years, and it's still, for many customers, it's still the right choice.
Yeah, very good point. So thanks for being so open to it. And it was a real pleasure talking to you, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if this conversation has challenged the way you are thinking about pallet automation, Swisslog also has a white paper available comparing AMRs, conveyors, and monorails, looking at throughput, flexibility, scalability, and the role of software. So download it at swisslog.com/whitepapers.